to a special edition of the CK podcast directly from Midici in Sacramento. We're so excited to start this partnership, and alongside me, I have my co-host Ty. How you doing, brother?
Oop, Sorry, I think my audio cut out. Um, yeah, how's it going, everybody? I'm super excited for this episode. Can't wait to talk more about NBA draft prospects and kind of seeing where the NBA is going to be next year. I have some hot takes about my power rankings. I don't think it took the traditional route, but I think it's going to be really fun. I'm ready to get into it.
So we'll be going over our way too early 2021 NBA power rankings and NBA mock draft 2.0. We're not too far away from the NBA draft, which is on November 18th. So we'll see what we think certain prospects will go from 1 to 14. We're not going to go the entire first round. That would take a full on hour to do that. So we'll do the top 14 and then we'll do the top 10 teams for our power rankings. And again, a huge shout out to Midici for hosting us here. If you guys really want to support your local businesses, definitely check them out. They got a bunch of amazing draft beers and then cocktails, which one of my favorite is the Light of the Sun that has some vodka, lemon juice, severed meat, and some limocello. So it's sweet, it's delicious, and I highly recommend that. Also, they're the closest thing to Italian pizza. So if you've ever been to Italy, highly recommend you guys to come down here and enjoy some pizza and some delicious cocktails. So let's get to it, brother. Who do you have at number one for your way too early 2021 NBA power rankings?
I think this one's pretty indisputable, right? The Los Angeles Lakers coming off a championship ring.
Yep.
Ron hasn't seen show any signs of him slowing down anytime soon. We all know AD is going to take those short year contracts, whether it's a 1-1, 2-1, and things like that. So they're the team to beat, and I think that they have a really good roster going into next season.
I agree. I also had them number one. One of the big reasons why is just the fact that they're the NBA champions. And then you hear things like potentially Chris Paul going to the Lakers. That would be insane. I think that would solidify them once again to repeat if that would ever happen. I know he's injury prone when he gets into that late of the season, but I just feel like they would monitor his time the right way, do the whole load management with him, and then when it's time to play, he would be healthy because a healthy AD could get you through a season with, a 70 to 75 games, LeBron James, and if you add Chris Paul to that supporting cast would get that much better. So absolutely, I have them at number one. At number two, a lot of people in the comments are upset that I had the Heat, but hey, they just upset a lot of teams. They're coming off an NBA Finals appearance where not many had them, and they took the Lakers to 6 games where a lot of people thought it would have been a sweep after game one, after the injuries. They were banged up. And I just feel like when you have the best coach, yes, this isn't a hot take to me. He is the best coach in the NBA, and Eric Spoelstra. You have a chance to win a lot of games. And when you have such a competitor and such a winner, such a tough-minded player like a Jimmy Butler, you best believe he's going to give you a chance to win. And who knows what they do this offseason. So for that fact alone, I have him at number two. What do you got at number two, bro?
I think that's definitely respectable. You got to understand that Miami definitely exceeded expectations, and I feel like their young guys are only going to get better. For me, I think my only doubts that I have is going through a whole season, not really having the luxury of a bubble and having to deal with real fans, real NBA travel. And I think it's going to be really difficult for them to acclimate to an environment like that. Don't get me wrong, though. I'm a huge Miami Heat fan. I think they're going to do really well next season. But in terms of power rankings, I think it's going to be really difficult because at number two, I know. I know this team has, they're in a weird position, but I think something we can't forget is a team that's been in the finals for the last few years prior to this season, the
Okay.
Golden State Warriors.
Okay.
We can't forget about the Golden State Warriors, one of the best backcourt duos in the NBA. Are we forgetting that Steph Curry and Klay Thompson can light a team up with threes at any moment? So I think that they have a really good solid core that they've always had on top of experience. I think both injuries, I know Clay's coming off a torn ACL, but I've seen a lot of players bounce back off of that. Steph Curry just with the hand, right? And I think it's really, really interesting what they're going to do with that number two pick, right? I doubt that they draft somebody. I mean, going into our mock draft, we're going to see, we're going to talk about that. But ultimately, I think they end up trading for another potential asset or superstar. And I've heard, through the whispers, Joel Embiid. I don't know if he really fits that system. I think I can kind of see him like a DeMarcus Cousins on that team, like when he was there. But at the same time, I didn't love that. But yeah, I got number two, Golden State. I think they are the team to knock off the Lakers if they do get knocked off in the West.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And with Joel Embiid, he'd be a much better fit than DeMarcus Cousins on the fact that he's such a great defensive player, and DeMarcus has never been that. If you add a Joel Embiid and then you just allow Draymond to just roam around and just do his thing like a free safety, that would be super scary. Obviously, they would have to slow it down a little bit for Joel Embiid, so that aspect of the offense would change. But man, I can really imagine Joel Embiid on the Warriors. I think that'd be a little bit unfair, especially if he could somehow stay healthy, which again with the whole Chris Paul thing, he'd be able to do the whole load management on such a great team and not really affect that team, right? And yeah, I can definitely see that. I'm not mad at you for having them at number two, but again, there's still a lot of believers that don't believe Clay can come back and be himself. I think he'll
Mhm.
be fine. I think he'll be fine. I'm with you on that. A lot of guys have came back from torn ACLs, MCLs, and even Achilles now, which the Achilles is the worst NBA injury, and
Yeah.
guys have bounced back from that, especially with today's medicine and all the technology that we have at our tip of our hand. So I'm not really worried about Klay Thompson. He puts the work in. He's a hard worker. So I'm okay with him, with you choosing the Warriors at number two. At number three, I still got the best team in the East in the Bucks. As long as they got Giannis, they're gonna have a chance to be a phenomenal regular season team. Now, when it gets to the playoffs, is where I've just pounded my head and said, "Man, they really need help at the point guard position," and that's where I think a Chris Paul would really benefit a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo and even a guy like Chris Middleton to facilitate his ability to score. We know Chris can score on all three levels. He's a great player, but he needs to be your third best player. And I've said that for a long time because if he's your third best player, you're going to win the NBA championship. And I think Chris Paul can be the second best player on that team. The only difference between them and the Lakers is that Chris would have to play more games and take on a much bigger role because on the Lakers, he'd be the third guy, right? And on the Bucks, he'd have to be the second guy. As much of a great fit that he is, it does change a lot of things on how you manage his minutes and his playing time. So that's what I think, but I still have him at number three. I think they're going to make moves. They'll get rid of Eric Bledsoe, and potentially they're looking at a guy like a Bogey Bogdanovic as well, who I've said would be a great fit in Milwaukee. I think they'll do some things in the offseason and try to convince Giannis to sign there long term.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think the Bucks are, obviously an established organization with Giannis behind them, and I think that they are going to make some moves. I think just a question I want to throw out there: who do you think is better for the Bucks, Bogdanovich or Brogdon?
I think Brogdon's a better player,
Yeah,
but having Bogey really supplements or fills out that vacancy that he left that Eric Bledsoe could never ever fill. So he'd be the closest thing to a Brogdon. I think the big difference for both of those players is that Brogdon's a really good defender, and
yeah.
that's where Bogey isn't that. But offensively, they're right there, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, I think if we're just speaking about the regular season, I definitely would either have the Bucks at two or three. I think they're obviously great regular season performers. For me personally, Leo knows when it comes to Giannis in the playoffs, until he proves something. Don't get me wrong, right? 26, right? He definitely has a lot of room to grow, and I think LeBron didn't win until later in his career as well. But for me, I have a surprise pick, and I think he's the second best player in the NBA in Kevin Durant.
Uh
So
oh.
I'm going with the Brooklyn Nets. the Brooklyn Nets at 3, above the Bucks, above the Heat, whatever you want to call it. I think we're forgetting that this is a 6'11 sniper, and you pair him alongside with one of the best combo ISO guards in the league and Kyrie Irving. And I'm not mad at the Steve Nash hiring. I think they have a lot of good guys in
I love
Brooklyn.
it.
You know what I mean? We're not forgetting Karis LeVert, DeAndre Jordan, Spencer Dinwiddie. Like, the list goes on. I don't know if they'll be able to bring back Joe Harris, but if they are, boom, another shooter off the bench, right? So for me, these last two picks, the Warriors and the Nets, have been, more speculative because we haven't seen what they've been able to do last season. But I think ultimately the Nets are the team to beat in the East, and I think the Bucks haven't been able to prove it. These last 2 years, they've had teams that they should have been able to beat, they were projected to beat, haven't been able to do it. And I think Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving aren't going to allow that to happen in the East.
That's definitely the biggest hot take because, as you said, it's a lot of speculation. We don't know what Steve Nash is. As much as I love Steve Nash, he could potentially be the next Steve Kerr and be one of the best coaches ever, but he can also be one of the biggest flops ever. We just don't know. We don't know how Kyrie will come back, especially after having such a controversial offseason already from so many levels, from so many different angles. We don't know. And then, again, as much as we've seen guys bounce back from an Achilles tear, we don't know how it's going to affect KD. So those question marks and that uncertainty really kept me from having the Nets at that spot. But again, I have them at number 4, which again is super high, just based on paper, right? On paper, they're such a great team. They have such great talent with LeVert and then Spencer. Those guys are ancillary pieces where on most teams they'd be, top 3 type guys, and even on the Kings, top 2 type guys. So
Yeah.
yeah, I completely understand it. I'm not mad at it, but I could see a lot of fans being like, well, no, they haven't proven anything. And yeah, we could see a Clippers type season where they struggle and then they have their brilliant moments. And then in the playoffs, because of the lack of chemistry, they struggle. And then the following year, they could do something big. So that's what I see could potentially happen. Again, I'm not mad at you. On paper, they potentially could be the best team, right? That's
Yeah.
how talented they are. So at number 4, again, I got the Nets. I already went over that. And then at number 5, I got the Clippers. I think a lot like that first year Heat team where they did make it to the finals and they lost, but they were in the East. So you got to give the Clippers some benefit of the doubt. They play in the West where there's a lot of tough teams. And I just feel like with another year and them becoming somewhat humble, it's going to really help them. What they needed to do was lose this way to come back even hungrier. And I feel like the Clippers are still in a great position. They just hired Ty Lue, and they say that he holds his superstars accountable, unlike Doc Rivers, which was really surprising to hear. I couldn't believe when they were saying that because we all know Doc commands a lot of respect from his players, but if they were not holding Kawhi Leonard accountable, allowing him to stay at his house in San Diego, being late to practices or whatnot, then yeah, I could see how that could rub off a lot of the players who put the work in, like a Pat Bev, like those type of guys, like the Montrezl Harrells. So yeah, if Ty Lue can be that guy, that friend type coach, but still holds you accountable, then they have a great shot at winning the championship next year.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like for me, I have Clippers at 4, and then I have Bucks at 5. So ultimately, I think the Clippers just kind of need another year to run it back. I
Mm-hmm.
think just like you said, there's a lot of things going on outside of the core with Trez's grandma, Lemon Pepper Lou and all this. So uh,
Mm-hmm. Lemon Pepper Blue. Shout out to the Orlando strip club, man.
yeah, for real. But yeah, ultimately, they're a talented roster, and I think we can't count them out. I think I'm hoping that Kawhi Leonard can have a real, a bounce back year and really perform in the playoffs because we got to see what he was able to do in Toronto as like the main guy. So That's where I have them. And then with the Bucks at 5, I think you can never count out Giannis. I think
Yep.
we say it year in and year out. We hope he can develop a little jumper, but
He's 25.
yeah, yeah. Hopefully he can get it down. And so even if he's able to knock down a little mid range, what I mean, a little bit elbow baseline jumpers, I'll be solid. And so just like you mentioned, they'll definitely move up in my power rankings if they're able to secure a guy like CP or even just another third star.
Perfect. So at number 6, got the Warriors. Again, some people may say it's too low. Some people may say it's too high. We don't know what they'll do with that number 2 pick, which I'm sure we'll discuss once we get to our mock draft. But they're in a great position, right? They can flip that pick and get a third, fourth type star with them, package up Wiggins. And I think some teams would rather do that and get a good player. Again, Wiggins, I'm not high on Andrew Wiggins. I think he's overrated. He's always been overrated, but he's still a good player. I can't deny that he's not a good player. Now, when you talk about does he deserve the contract that he has, absolutely not. And Jimmy Butler was right about it. He's soft. He doesn't play any defense. And that could rub off a lot of teams the wrong way, and which would keep a lot of teams from taking on that type of contract. But yet again, if you put him as your number 4 guy, I think that's really, really good. And we have yet to see what he can do with the Splash Brothers. I think he's a perfect fit in that system. They may just say, we'll draft Wiseman, run it back with Wiggins. If he can buy in into being a good defender, which he has every capability of being, then that team is the team to beat. Better than the Nets, better than the Lakers. If Andrew Wiggins, which is the X factor, can buy in and be that guy, that team is dangerous.
So would you buy that team if Andrew Wiggins turns into Golden State Warriors Harrison Barnes?
Absolutely. I think they're the team to beat,
Yeah,
especially if the Splash Brothers come back healthy.
yeah. I hope that he's able to fit into that system and not just be one of those like one-dimensional guys that can score because on that team that's not what they need. So we'll see.
I think Charlie just said, could y'all see Wiggins getting traded straight up for Andre Drummond? Again, I rather draft Wiseman and then keep Wiggins because, again, Drummond is another guy who I'm like, well, he really can't shoot. At least Wiseman would somehow stretch the floor out for you in limited time because at the end of the day, they're going to go small because
Yeah.
that's where they're best at. So if
Mhm.
that was the idea to trade Wiggins for Drummond, I wouldn't do it personally. But it's still a great question, Charlie. So who do you have on number 6?
For number 6, I have the Miami Heat. We kind
Okay.
of talked about that already,
Yep.
right?
Okay.
I'm hoping that they're able to emulate what they did this year. I'm a huge fan of the underdog story with Jimmy Butler and everything. But ultimately, I think there's going to be a lot going on in the league. It's hard to win in the regular season, right? So I think seeding wise, it might be a little bit more difficult and like not as uneven, right? Because in the bubble, everybody's playing in the same arena, no fans, etc. But when you're like a 6 seed playing a 3 seed, it's way different. So I think that's where they might struggle. But I think definitely we can see them being a team to reckon with this next season.
Who do you got on number 7?
Number 7. Come on now. This is the cold-blooded killer, Jamal Murray. That's my boy Ball,
Oh,
baby. I'm
okay.
buying in. I think that they are a force to be reckoned with. I think they surpass any team that I haven't mentioned yet, whether it's for Portland. I really believe in the young guy, and I think the year prior, right, that's when they lost to the Trailblazers in the playoffs
In
in Game
7,
7.
yep.
Right? So I didn't know Jamal Murray would have that potential, right? I think
Me neither.
I would, yeah, I thought that, at some point earlier in his career, I kind of put him at the same level as Gary Harris, where there's
I
like, oh,
did.
they're good, solid role players. They're even starters in the NBA, and especially at a team in an organization like Denver, they have to keep those guys. But for him to elevate his game that much, and for him to, work so well alongside Jokic. I remember when I was watching the Game 7 when it was the Nuggets versus the Jazz. They were both playing the same game. It was Gobert and Mitchell versus Jokic and Jamal Murray, and they absolutely dominated them in that Game 7. So I'm really excited to see where that duo can move forward. We definitely got to see a lot of their role players step up, Michael Porter, Jeremy Grant, etc. So I think Denver is definitely a good team. Just like you mentioned, shout out to Mike Malone. They've been doing really well in that organization. And yeah, I'm in on the Nuggets. I think they're a team to be reckoned with.
Okay, I think you're sleeping on the Celtics, which is who I have at number 7. The Celtics have one of the top 15 players already in Jason Tatum. And then you couple that with a guy like a Kemba Walker who had a disappointing playoffs. Make no mistake about it. I'm going to hold him accountable, especially because we always said, man, Kemba needs help in Charlotte. He had help this year. He didn't really show up. He was outplayed severely by a lot of guys that the Celtics faced. But still, he's still a really good player. He's still an all-star. And then you also add a guy like a Jaylen Brown who's growing, who could have been an all-star, but yet he didn't make the team. Again, to me, an all-star team is a popularity contest, so I don't buy too much into that. Jaylen Brown, to me, is really, really good defensive player, can do it on both sides. He's growing every single year. He's getting better every single year, and I expect him to take another jump this following year, which will really help him out a lot. And then you got a guy like a Marcus Smart, who is the heart and soul of that team, super tough, can do it on both sides as well, but especially on defense, man. I mean, that guy is a bulldog. He likes to flop a lot,
Yeah.
which, again, he could have been a soccer player. Shout out to my boys, Chelsea, who are playing Sevilla right now. Hopefully they're winning. I haven't checked the score yet, but, hey, shout out to Marcus Smart for always loving to flop out there. But that's why I got him at number 7, man. And then number 8, I got the Mavericks. The Mavericks could be the best team in the NBA next year if they stay healthy. And that's a big if because KP scares me a lot where he just like AD, you're like, man, like this who can get hurt at any moment. And if he does get hurt, they're screwed to some extent. So the Dallas Mavericks, if they can stay healthy, add one more shooter, add one more defensive playmaker, which they had in Powell, but he got injured. They'll be really good. They were one of the best offenses in NBA history this past season. And Luka Doncic in year number 3, in year number 3, will get even better. That's why I have them at 8. But they have the upside to be top 5 team without question. What do you got at 7 and 8?
Yeah, so for me, at 8, I have the Celtics, and so just like you mentioned, there's a lot of young guys on that team that are well, technically they're not even that young anymore, right? They've been in the league for a little bit, so they're definitely developing. Shout out to Jaylen Brown, Berkeley alumni. So
Yep.
he's a smart guy, and so in terms of just his basketball IQ, I think he doesn't really get that appreciation where he's able to see things on the floor and make good plays, and so I think his playmaking ability is definitely underrated, but ultimately, for me, the reason why they're a little bit lower than your list is just because I don't see them getting over that hump. I think there's just been multiple years and multiple seasons. Don't get me wrong, they are very young. I feel like I am counting them out a little bit early, but I feel like Kemba Walker or Gordon Hayward should have been that guy, right? They should have been that guy to put them over. And even within that team system, because Tatum is the man in Boston, right? But for a solid number 2 or number 3, I don't see Kemba, Hayward, or Brown really competing against the other great duos in the NBA, whether
Okay.
it's Brooklyn, LA, Clippers, whatever you want to call it. So for me, just like we were talking about yesterday, speculative wise, if they go for a home run swing and get a James Harden or something like that, that's when I might hop on the
Yeah.
Boston. But for me, it's like you accumulate all these assets, and the Kyrie year, that's what it was supposed to be, didn't pan out. So now they're in this weird transition period, and I'm a huge fan of Tatum. I think he's one of the greatest young stars in the league, and I can't wait to see what he's able to do. But until they prove to me they can get over the hump, then I don't know if I can hop on that boat. And then at 9, surprisingly, I have them over the Mavericks. The Mavericks round out my last 10, but it's going to be the Toronto Raptors. I think this is a team that, you can't ever forget about. They're always a great regular season team. I'm hoping that, Siakam can definitely develop more and, not do his half spin in the paint that he did all against the Celtics, which is very annoying. But, yeah, I'm assuming they bring back Fred VanVleet. If they don't, I would put the Mavericks above them. But Kyle Lowry, VanVleet, Siakam, these are just guys that you can't count out in the East, and so they always get wins, and so that's where I'm at with them. And just to round it off with the Mavericks, I'm really excited to see a healthy KP alongside Doncic. I think what the stats came out or like the odds came out. Doncic is the favorite for
He
MVP next
is. He
year, right?
is.
So
He is.
I'm hoping to.
He is at plus 450. Then AD's in second place at plus 550. Then Giannis, if he could three-peat, would be at plus 650. Which I love those odds at plus
Yeah.
650. You put $100, you make $650. You know the Bucks are going to be good, and barring injury, those are good odds to have because say you put $100 right now, you get him at 650, and then you have a guy like a Steph that's a sleeper. He's also a 650, but even like a LeBron or even a KD at plus 900, and say they're top three for the first half of the year, you go out and you put another $100, and you're guaranteed to make some money in the sense that you have better odds with two guys rather
Yeah.
than one guy. So take advantage of these odds, y'all. And again, we pretty much have the same top 10 teams, just in different orders. I had the Raptors at 9 as well, and then the Nuggets at 10 to round that off. Again, as you said, that Raptors team has that winning DNA, and they could have easily beaten the Celtics and gotten to the Eastern Conference Finals again. And who knows what happens then, right? But they didn't, and they fell short. You still got to give them props. They're still going to be really good. They have a really young head coach and Nurch, so I like him a lot because there are so many national analysts that disrespect the Raptors every single year. And then you have all of Canada in the comment section saying, where the hell is my team? How are they not top 10, right? Like SI came out with their list, and they didn't even have the Raptors in the top 10, which I think is extremely disrespectful. Yeah, I think we reached about 100,000 people on that post, and they were pissed. And I'm like, you should be pissed because they were a top two team in the East. What makes you think they'll be even, five? Like, they'll be a top five team in the East next year. Make no mistake about it. So I got them at number 9, and then the Nuggets, as you said, they made a huge stride in the right direction, and it only makes sense to have them at number 10. I think about 3 people that are Nuggets fans came at me today on B Zone, and they were like, "Man, they just made it to the Western Conference Finals, but you got them at 10." I'm like, "Yeah, but they could have easily lost to the Jazz as well in the first round."
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm disrespecting them. You have to look at this list and say, my gosh, there are a lot of good teams in the NBA. So being upset about that, like if I had them at 11, I could see the argument, but I had them in my top 10. It's okay, man. They have the upside to be a lot better as well. All these teams do. So being in top 10 is not a knock on any of these teams, and that's how I feel about it. But I'll let you take on the next segment, which is NBA Mock Draft 2.0.
Yeah, for sure. But just one last note on the power rankings. I'm so happy to see like this balance of power in the NBA,
Me
right?
too.
We've seen the Warriors and Cavaliers play over and over and over again. So to see not knowing who's going to win the chip next year, I'm super excited with all these different duos, and yeah, I can't wait to see what's
Yeah.
to come.
Yep. And real quick to address my boy AR Elopement number 1. This is the Christian Pulisic jersey, bro. It's actually the number 22 kit, which he changed numbers to number 10, which I love number 10 a lot more. And I'm so happy because that just shows that our U.S. men's national team is going to get so much better. For Chelsea to give him the number 10 shows you a lot, and it shows how much they respect him and how much they value him as a player. And that's just a big move for a national team as well. He's obviously he missed the first 3 weeks because of injury, or 4 weeks, but he played against Southampton last weekend, and they tied 3-3. They gave it up in the 92nd minute, but it's just exciting to see. And real quick, real soccer talk. It's exciting to see all of our young talent playing on big teams like Barcelona, like Bayern Munich, like Dortmund, and obviously Chelsea, man. So I think the U.S. has a bright future, and they could be, again, continue to be up there with Mexico as the best in the CONCACAF, man. So shout out to my boy Christian Pulisic, who's doing great things in England. But go ahead, bro.
Yeah, for sure. So, next segment we got going on is Mock Draft 2.0. I know a lot of critics and a lot of fans have been saying this isn't the most talent-driven draft, but I think there are a lot of good players in this draft, and I think there's going to be a lot of diamonds in the rough that
Yep.
a lot of teams are going to be able to steal later in the draft, whether it's late lottery or even post-late lottery. So it's definitely a lot of opportunities up in the air for teams. But to start, let's go with number one. Who we have at number one? Leo, you can go ahead.
Oh man, it's tough, but you got to go Anthony Edwards, right? The Timberwolves, if they stay in that spot, you can't go Wiseman because they got Cat. I just don't see how that duo would even work. But if you go Anthony Edwards and you got D'Lo and you got Cat, that's a nice offensive punch. I could see that happening. So I got Edwards, who has the most upside in the draft. This dude can be better than Mitch Richmond. He reminds me a lot of him, but with an inconsistent jump shot in terms of statistics, like his shot didn't run out that well, but when you look at his mechanics, they're really good. And if you see his elevation on the shot and that game where he had like almost 30 in the second half, and you just saw those signs of greatness from him. And again, much like Ben Simmons when he was at LSU, he didn't want to be there anymore, and he understood that he was playing for a bad team, and his teammates sucked. He was just ready for the NBA draft. That's how I feel about Edwards because his team wasn't very good. So, but except for Rayshawn Hammonds, who is a good player, he might get drafted late first, early second. Shout out to my boy Rayshawn Hammonds from the Georgia Bulldogs. But still, other than that, they didn't have much talent to work with, and I know that he knows that he is arguably the best player in the draft and the potential number one pick. So he kind of half-assed it in that sense, which a lot of scouts don't like to see. Like you want guys to play their hearts out all the time. Ben Simmons didn't. He's just fine. He's an all-star, and I feel like Anthony Edwards has that potential to be that guy. I love him as a prospect. A lot of people don't, but if he could just buy into the system wherever he goes, I think he can be really good. So I have him on number one. And real quick, I don't have an outlet for my laptop, and we're at 32%. So we kind of do have to rush the second ladder of this conversation.
No worries. Um, I think for me, I'm a young guy, right? Born in 2001, so I got to go with my young guy. I've been watching him since my freshman year of high school. The most transcendent player in the NBA draft, the player with the high ceiling, in my opinion, LaMelo Ball.
I'm not
And
mad
I
at you.
and I get it, right? You know, we got to see the Lonzo experiment. We got to see the LeVar
He's better.
thing going on.
He's better than
And yeah,
he's better than Lonzo Ball.
LaMelo's way better than Lonzo. He's been playing up his entire life. He's been playing against grown men since he was 16, going on to play in Lithuania. He's dominated, whether it's in the Drew League, whether it's in these private workouts you see on YouTube. This guy's just built different. And seeing the pictures that he looks like now, he's built now. You know what I mean? He has tattoos. He's looking like a real NBA star. And I think that Puma saw that. That's why they probably offered him a lot of money up front. That's why he signed there. But I think LaMelo is going to be the next marquee name player in the NBA. Just his social media status, right? He's one of the most famous basketball players in the world. You know what I mean? Just as a NBA prospect. So I think this is the guy that if you want to change your whole organization around, I wouldn't be even mad if teams at 5, 6, 7 are willing to trade their whole futures to go number one. I've never seen a prospect number one like LaMelo. And I think honestly, I could see star potential similar to Luka Doncic, where
8,000%.
yeah, in terms of his play style, I get it. His mechanics are off and things like that. But I think ultimately he has the experience. I think something we try to knock off of Doncic was like, oh, it's overseas. This guy was winning MVPs as 18, 19 as a teenager. You know what I mean? LaMelo Ball has been doing it year in and year out with adult grown men. And so I think if you wanted the best player in the draft, is going to have to be LaMelo Ball.
Yeah, he's the closest thing to Luka Doncic. Now he'll never be Luka, but he's the closest thing, and that's not a bad thing. That's not a knock on LaMelo. His IQ is incredible, just like Luka's. He's 3 steps ahead of everybody on the court, and when you have that type of vision, how can you not think he's going to be great? And I get it. His mechanics aren't great. Luka's, even though he shot a poor percentage, you always saw that his mechanics were really good, and that's what I kept telling people. I don't care if he shoots 33% from 3, but look at the difficulty of shots that he takes and that he took overseas when he played with Real Madrid. And it's a little bit different with LaMelo. Like his shot is more of a push shot, but
Yeah.
again, at that size, at 6'8", with a little bit of some bulkiness in him, that as you said, we've seen, and I actually got to interview him on the Zoom call when we had the scrum call about 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago. He looks a lot bigger. He's been working out in Michigan a lot since March. I'm super high on LaMelo Ball, and I wouldn't be mad if he went number one, but that would mean to me that once again D'Lo would have to get moved for a Ball brother. And
Yeah.
I don't know if they want to do that, especially after how or what they did to get him. So in terms of fit, I think Edwards is a better fit, but in terms of talent, it's just hard, man. Like I think both those guys have such high upside, but a lot of things could go wrong if those guys don't buy in. I understand the idea of LaMelo being a bad defensive. They're both bad defensive players right now, but they both
Yeah.
have the upside to be good defenders, or at least plus defenders in the NBA, and they'll do their thing offensively. Again, I'm not mad at you, man. I'm gonna let you go with the entire mock draft, and then I'll just kind of answer to what you have to say. So go ahead for for number two.
Number two, I have Anthony Edwards. I think we
Okay.
kind of mentioned that. A real solid NBA ready guy,
Okay.
real stocky, and I definitely see him contributing to an NBA team immediately. At three, I have James Wiseman. Right, this dude's humongous. If you've seen any of his Instagram workouts, he makes his trainers look like literally midgets. It's insane.
He's
So
nice. He's nice.
I think how stocky he is, and he has a nice little touch around the rim. Unfortunately, we weren't able to see too much of that since he was suspended in Memphis. But yeah, real stocky guy. I really like the way that he's able to finish around the rim and be really creative. I see a little bit of Bam Adebayo out of him. What do you think?
I like him a lot. See, with him, it's like a love-hate thing because when I first found out about him, I loved him, and then I got turned off by his lack of not having a true jump shot. And again, I'm not the highest on big man. I'm a wing. Everybody knows I'm a wing guard type of guy, and when you draft a Bagley over Luca, it pisses me off because bigs, for the most part, like you just don't build around a big. I don't care what anybody says. Like this is
Yeah.
a guard wing driven league. Even the great ones like the ADs and the Jokic's and the Joel Embiid's, but you're in a lot better position if you have a star wing or star guard. So I like him a lot, and if he goes 3 to 5, 3 to 6, that's value right there, and you kind of have to take him at that point. So I'm not mad at that. I like him a lot, but there are certain things that he needs to improve on before I'm 1,000% sold on him. But who do you have on number four?
Number four, I think outside of the top three, the most NBA ready player is Obi Toppin. I really liked what he was able to do in Daytona, and I know his concerns with being 22 years old. Right, a lot of teams are kind of shying away from that. But I think if you need someone to contribute right away, he just looks NBA ready to me. You know, whether he's shooting off the dribble, making great defensive plays, or finishing around the rim, this guy's just built to play in the NBA. I've been watching a lot of like Gilbert Arenas lately, and what he's mentioned is that some guys are actually better in the NBA than they were in college just because of the system, just because of the way that they play zones in college. So I think ultimately Obi Toppin is the guy for you. I haven't really looked at the draft order, so I don't know where he would fit there. But ultimately, yeah, I think he's a very developed player, and if you need someone immediately, he's your guy to call.
I like him. I like him. He reminds me a lot of a guy like Amari Stoudemire offensively, but he's not very good defensively. There are a couple of people who think he could be a small forward. There's no way in hell, as athletic as he is, he's a power forward, small ball five in my opinion. But he can stretch out the floor. He's skilled offensively, so I like it. So you're saying he'd go to Chicago, right?
Yeah,
He could fit there, but I think they would have to get rid of Laurie Markkinen if that was the case.
yeah, same thing. That yeah, it'd be weird, a weird fit there. But if they're just trying to go for like the best player, I guess you have.
Available? Okay.
Yeah. Here at five, I have Onyeka Okongwu. I think that's how you
Yep.
say his name.
I love
I think
him.
yeah, just for me, right? I watched a lot of Chino Hills back in high school, and so seeing him work alongside LaMelo, I think he definitely got overshadowed by the Ball brothers. But he was really productive at USC. I mean, I don't think
Really
he's
productive.
yeah. And so I think the biggest thing with him that stands out is his touch. He has
Yep.
insane touch for a big man, whether it's floaters, whether it's that baseline jumper. I think something I always advocate to all my friends when we're debating bigs is can they hit a jump shot outside of the paint? You know what I mean? Yeah, you can hit floaters and things like that, but that's what, separates good from great. Players like Bam Adebayo can step out a little bit. Players like AD can step out a little bit. So I definitely see that out of Onyeka. I think I guess he's not as stocky as a typical big. I know a lot of people are saying that he might be a little undersized, but I think ultimately, if he's able to, get shots off and just be a smart basketball player, I think he can contribute to any team right now.
I agree. I agree. I love his touch. He's the closest thing to a Bam Adebayo from that perspective. There's a ton of film where they played against each other in high school. I like him a lot. He was super productive. He elevated his game at USC, where again he was overshadowed by the Ball brothers, Chino Hills, but I love him as a defensive prospect as well. He could be really good on that side. So he'd be going to the Cavs, which could make sense. Could make sense. So our number 6, the Hawks. What do you got?
I think he's pronounced his name what? Denny
Denny
Avija?
Advia, which
Yeah, Denny
is my favorite
Avija.
prospect of the draft.
Really?
Yeah, I think Denny's going to be really good. He's not Luca again. Anytime you have a Euro, slash like overseas type guy, the first thing is he Luka Doncic? And no, he's not. But he's faster than Luca. He's a little bit bigger than Luca. He's a better defender than Luca. He has high IQ. He's NBA ready, which again, a lot of guys are not NBA ready in this draft. He is one of those guys. He's still pretty young, and I can see the Warriors going after him for that wing versatility. He could go, from 2 to 10. He's that good, and a lot of teams will regret not choosing him. And I'm saying that on record. A lot of teams will regret not choosing him if he slips past top 5.
Oh, really? Well, I'm personally going to have to disagree with that. I think you do make a good point in terms of how everybody wants to compare any foreign prospect now and there and in the future to Luka Doncic, and that's just unfair. But for me, I don't know. Like when I was watching some clips of him, I got to see a lot of athleticism, right, and a lot of good basketball IQ. So he was making good plays. I think he can definitely contribute to an NBA team. Do I think he has that transcendent nature in him? I don't know. I saw a lot of his play style. Don't quote me wrong on this. Similar to like a Mario Hezonja, type guy, where he's kind of like a glue guy, being able to give you solid points off the bench. I'd probably be talking more earlier in Mario's career because now he's kind of at the tail end of his
Yep.
career. But I see a kind of a similar play style. Don't get me wrong. He's like 6'9", right?
Yep.
So definitely don't quote me wrong on that. But I saw a very similar play style to that, kind of more bringing the foreign game over here to the States. I'm hoping, I always root for the young guys. So if he's able to, prove me wrong and show that he has a whole different side of his game. But yeah, I think I'm not the biggest on him. I think there's a couple guys on the list after this that I think are better. So.
Right on, man. I'm at 11%, so go ahead and just go through every single pick, and we'll just give our best takes for like the last 2 minutes before this thing dies on us.
For sure. So I have Isaac Okoro, right, from Auburn.
Yep.
Yeah, I know a lot of people have been telling him drawing comparisons to Kawhi Leonard, but man, this guy is built, man.
He
I'm
is.
hoping that we can see a lot more off the dribble stuff, but this is stuff that Kawhi definitely didn't have at San Diego State, but can be developed in the NBA. But this guy is just a force to be reckoned with. Crazy around the rim finisher, and I think he has a solid jump shot. It's just a matter of him shooting the ball more. So, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I like him. I like him, but go ahead. We have to kind of. Oh, I don't know. This computer's weird, man. So we have to hurry up and just give me your list from
Sure.
7 to 14.
So I have Killian Hayes, Sadiq Bey, Tyrese Halliburton, Precious Achua, Devin Vassell, Aaron Neesmith, Kyra Lewis, and Patrick Williams. Those rounded out for me.
Who'd you have at 12 for the Kings?
12. Aaron Neesmith, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what a lot of
He's
people
like,
have.
again, real quick for everybody. Everybody knows that I'm high on Aaron, sniper shooter. He could fit perfectly for the Kings, so it makes sense. If you want a backup point guard for year one, Kyra Lewis is the guy. He's the closest
Yeah.
thing to De'Aaron Fox in terms of speed.
Mhm.
So I would love that 1-2 punch, and then potentially them playing together. If one of those two can potentially develop a consistent jump shot. But I apologize to everybody. This computer's dying. Yeah, man, I'm super excited about this. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this conversation, and make sure you guys drop a review. We'll get into much more depth about every single guy, but I agree with you. It kind of rounds out our top 14 lottery picks. Thank you guys so much for all the support, and we'll see you guys on the next one.